I'm a 30-year-old woman engaged to Joseph Mayo, who is 32. We've been engaged for several months, but we haven't begun wedding preparations yet. Currently, we live apart because I'm the main caregiver for my mother. My parents divorced a few years ago, and ever since, I've stepped up to care for her. It's not because she's elderly or incapable, but because she has never worked and doesn't contribute financially. I am the sole provider for our family, and despite my challenging upbringing with a narcissistic mother and rigid expectations, I can't bring myself to abandon her. Recently, my 37-year-old sister Maria ran into marital issues. She called our mother in distress, explaining that her husband, Carl, 40, had kicked her out and they were headed for a divorce. Maria was heartbroken and barely able to speak. When she arrived at our house, she explained that Carl was upset about her spending habits. Although Maria was a stay-at-home wife with traditional gender roles, Carl had initially accepted that arrangement. However, the rising cost of living caused strain, and Maria started dipping into their savings for luxury purchases, which led to constant arguments. Carl felt overwhelmed, working long hours only to return to a wife who didn't acknowledge their financial struggles. I could understand Carl's frustrations, given Maria's spending habits. However, neither my mother nor Maria sympathized with Carl's perspective, which wasn't surprising given their lack of employment history. Maria split household duties with Carl but expected him to cook after work, adding to his burden. While I sympathized with Carl, I knew it wasn't the right time to confront Maria. Instead, I offered her a place to stay with us as long as she needed. Despite the financial strain it would put on me, it felt like the right thing to do since she had nowhere else to go. The first few days were tough as we adjusted to our new living situation. Maria had frequent emotional outbursts, and I couldn't help but empathize with her. During one of these breakdowns, she suggested I delay my wedding for at least 3 years, so she could process her divorce. I stared at her, shocked. There was no way I was going to postpone my wedding for her sake. When I glanced at my mother, she simply nodded as if it were a reasonable request. I firmly declined and retreated upstairs. Imagine my surprise when, 2 weeks later, I saw Maria in a cafe with Joseph, laughing and chatting as if everything was fine. Joseph had told me he had errands to run, and I had no idea he was meeting Maria. I was furious and confronted them, but Maria brushed me off, claiming she was just being friendly to a new family member. I found this behavior completely unacceptable, especially from Joseph, who knew how strained my relationship with my mother and sister was. I stormed home and shared what I saw with my mom. To my disbelief, she seemed unfazed, saying it was okay because Joseph was attractive and she needed the confidence boost. According to her, who else would give her that reassurance if not family? I couldn't believe my ears. I reminded her that Joseph wasn't technically family, considering they wanted me to postpone my wedding to him for 3 years. Yet here she was, cozying up to my fiancé. My mom casually remarked that this was how things were and warned me to expect Joseph to leave me because Maria was more attractive, and men couldn't resist that. I couldn't fathom my own mother saying something so hurtful. I realized it was time to cut ties with both her and Maria. I started making plans. I began searching for one-bedroom apartments to rent and looked into job options for my mother and Maria so they could support themselves. I was tired of being their financial support and emotional punching bag. After a couple of weeks, I found a place near my workplace. I distanced myself from Joseph, deciding to give him the silent treatment. I had already decided to break up with him due to his troubling connection with my sister. Once I had everything in place, I called for a family meeting in the living room. I told Mom and Maria I was moving out. While I had already covered the rent for the upcoming month, they would have to figure things out after that. Maria had the audacity to laugh at my decision, but I was serious. I handed them a list of jobs I had researched, which could help cover their expenses. I made it clear that I was done being taken advantage of. All they did was take from me without offering any emotional support. My mother exploded, yelling and breaking things, calling me a monster and a terrible daughter for doing this to them. I stood my ground, saying that if I was a monster, so be it. I was done catering to their needs. I felt liberated, even though I knew this step was drastic. I wondered if I was being too harsh on them, but deep down I knew cutting them out was necessary. Joseph finally called, confused by my cold behavior. I told him about the situation. including how Maria had been flirting with him and how my mom had subtly encouraged it. Joseph showed me a message from my mom saying they were planning a surprise birthday party for me. He had met Maria at the cafe, expecting my mom to be there too, but she bailed last minute, leaving Maria to act overly flirtatious. Joseph wanted to tell me this earlier, but my cold attitude had kept him silent. I apologized for my behavior and asked him to cut ties with my family and block them, which he did right away. Joseph and I reconciled, but knowing this about my family made it hard for me to fully forgive them. We've set a wedding date, and while there's a lot of planning ahead, I'm excited for this new chapter. As for my mother, she found a job, but she continues to hurl insults at me whenever she can. I remain unfazed, having severed all ties with her and Maria. Since moving out, I've found immense happiness. Today, I had my first dress fitting, and I felt absolutely beautiful. While I missed my mom and wished she could be there, I was surrounded by supportive friends. My aunt, who has been like a mother to me, drove in to help and has been amazing throughout the wedding process. Joseph's family has also been incredibly supportive. Paul, a relative, even offered to help with preparations and invited me to call on him whenever needed. He's coming to the wedding, unlike my mother and Maria, which I now find amusing. While I occasionally miss my mom, I know deep down that cutting her out was the right decision. I'm embracing this new chapter, surrounded by people who genuinely care about my happiness. It's truly heartwarming to see you surrounded by such a supportive circle now. I'm so proud of you for standing your ground. You did the right thing. Let them stew in their negativity. You've already given them more than enough. Focus on your own future, while they remain stuck in the past where they belong. As for my own story, I'm a 27-year-old woman who's been living with sleepwalking since I was 7. It comes and goes, with episodes lasting anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. Every person I've dated has known about my condition, and my husband, Julian, a 30-year-old man, was no different. He actually found it amusing and accepted it without hesitation. However, my relationship with Julian's mother has always been a bit rocky. She never warmed to me, and it seemed less about my sleepwalking and more about the fact that she didn't think I was good enough for her son. Julian always defended me, standing firm in our relationship. When he told her we were getting married, he shut down her objections, leaving her speechless. A few weeks before our wedding, Julian's mother had to move in with us due to a minor accident. I dreaded it, but I accepted it because it was Julian's responsibility to care for her. We got married 10 days ago, and, as expected, my mother-in-law found fault with everything I did. On our first night together, she witnessed me sleepwalking and screamed in fear, completely unaware of her own reaction. I continued my routine, and Julian found it hilarious, telling me all about it the next morning. My mother-in-law, frightened, called me names like witch, but Julian stepped in and explained my condition to her. Even though he tried to ease her fears, she still held a grudge, seeing me as a threat because of her religious beliefs, something that had never affected Julian growing up. I calmly explained my condition to her, but she remained unconvinced. The real shock came one night when she insisted that I sleep in another room to prevent my demonic behavior from affecting Julian. She even threatened to lock me out to keep her son safe from what she believed was my affliction. I stared at her, stunned, but she was dead serious. Julian, however, couldn't stop laughing. He told his mother to leave us be, promising they would talk tomorrow. After a final look at me, she left the room. The next morning, I woke up on the porch, confused about how I had gotten there. My mother-in-law suggested I might have unlocked the door and wandered out, which seemed plausible given I'd done it a few times as a child. I brushed it off as a one-off, but then the next morning, I found myself back outside. This had never happened before, and I was concerned. I spoke with Julian about it, and he shared my worries. He decided to install cameras around the house and promised to check on me during the night. I appreciated his concern but asked him not to mention the cameras to his mother. While the cameras were being set up, I accompanied my mother-in-law to her doctor's appointments. We didn't speak much, which suited me fine. When we returned, the cameras had been installed. The following morning, I found myself on the porch again, confirming my suspicions that something was wrong. I began to suspect my mother-in-law might be involved. She had been acting unusually smug lately, so I decided to check the footage from the cameras. That's when I uncovered the truth. My mother-in-law had been orchestrating the entire thing. She would get up in the middle of the night, open the door wide while making sure all the interior doors were shut. When I sleepwalked outside, she would lock the door behind me, ensuring I couldn't get back in. Then, in the early hours, she would unlock the door again, making it look like I had gone outside on my own. I couldn't believe her deception, especially considering her supposed frailty. I wanted to tell Julian right away, but I knew he had a 2-day business trip coming up. Realizing the situation was becoming dangerous, I decided I had to confront his mother myself. Part of me wanted to do it face to face, but a more vengeful side wanted to show her the consequences of her actions. I contacted my father, who had connections in the area due to his real estate background. He had helped my mother-in-law find a place to stay at a reduced rent. I asked him to speak to the landlord and have her rent increased starting next month. In the meantime, I continued documenting the incidents and showed Julian the footage when he returned home. At first, he didn't believe me, but after watching the videos, he was furious. He confronted his mother, telling her she wasn't welcome in our home anymore. She tried to justify her actions, claiming she was protecting him from what she believed were demons I carried. But Julian stood firm. Despite her tears and tantrums, he told her to leave, and she finally did. I began to wonder if I had been too harsh in standing up to my mother-in-law. It's been a week since she left. The sleepwalking hasn't stopped, but at least I no longer find myself outside. Today, she called, upset and asking for help with her finances. She even suggested moving in with us. Julian quickly shut her down, refusing to put my safety at risk. She asked for money, but he refused, reminding her that her affordable housing was arranged through my father's connections, and she couldn't continue to exploit them while treating me badly. Eventually, she said she wanted to apologize to me, but I told Julian I wasn't interested in her drama and asked him to tell her to leave me alone. I'm not concerned about how she plans to find money. She'll likely have to downsize. Julian and I are firm in our decision that she won't be living with us. She's moved into a smaller place, thankfully far from us. However, she's been spreading negative comments about me on Facebook. I usually avoid that kind of drama, but Julian refused to let it slide. He exposed her mistreatment of me, which caused other family members to turn against her. Since then, there's been radio silence from her. Julian and I are currently enjoying our honeymoon in Italy. We've already explored Rome and are heading to Venice, Milan, and Bologna. We might even visit other countries if we have time, but Italy is our main focus. My mother-in-law was bitter when she found out about our trip and tried to make amends, but I now see through her intentions. Julian has left the decision of reconciliation up to me, and I've made it clear I want nothing to do with her. She tried to play the victim on Facebook again, but she was quickly shut down. It felt incredibly satisfying, and I can't help but enjoy my little bit of petty revenge. I'm grateful to have such a supportive husband, one who's willing to stand up to his mother for me. Not every spouse would do that. I'm looking forward to the future with Julian and can't wait to see what's next. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Stay stunned.